halfway through the season here. Here's a few hitters I look to add on the All-Star break this week. The first guy, Matt Carpenter, the New York Yankees. I mentioned Carpenter as an ad last week for your fantasy team, but this guy's having some type of season with this New York Yankee team, and he's definitely a comeback player of the year candidate, no doubt about it. On the season here for Carpenter, 13 home runs, 34 RBIs, 23 runs scored, a 360 batting average, and a 473 on base. A Carpenter, he's playing almost every day for this Yankee team here, and he's been a big-time get for them in this lineup. When the last couple seasons, he looked on with St. Louis, and then this offseason signed with the Texas Rangers, and they didn't want to keep him. They let him go in free agency, and now he signs with the Yankees, and he's had one heck of a season so far in the last month with the Yankees. 7 homers, 18 RBIs, 12 runs scored, a 404 average, and a 509 on base. So right here, he's getting on base more than half the time in the last month. Here's Carpenter. I know it's a small sample size with only 80 at-bats on the season about here, but this guy's red hot and the hottest player in fantasy baseball, arguably, as well. Ranked number 5 over the last 2 weeks, and he's available still in 45% of fantasy leagues. So this will probably be the last week you have an opportunity to get Carpenter on your team. And he also qualifies at first, second, and outfield. Great versatility. So the last few games here for him: July 10th at Boston, 2 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. July 13th versus the Reds, 0 for 1. July 14th versus the Reds, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. July 15th versus Boston, 2 for 3. July 16th versus Boston, 2 for 4. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 3 runs scored. And July 17th versus Boston, 1 for 4 with a run and 3 RBIs. So right now, he's white hot as Carpenter. And these few days off here could actually hurt him, cool him off here after he's been on fire over the last month. So right now, he's definitely the hottest pickup this week. And I would go out there and get him on my fantasy team before it's too late. Obviously, he's not going to keep up the numbers to this extent here, but he's definitely a guy that can help fantasy owners and be good in a Yankee lineup where pitchers aren't going to pay attention to him like they are, obviously, to a Judge, a Gleyber Torres, Anthony Rizzo, and Giancarlo Stanton. The next guy is Ramon Urias of the Baltimore Orioles. So Urias, he's come out of nowhere over the last month to 2 months here to have good fantasy value. On the season, 9 home runs, 31 RBIs, 29 runs scored, at 255 average, and a 302 on base. But the last 2 weeks here, he's been red hot. Urias, 3 home runs, 12 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 400 average, and a 447 on base. The only thing here with Urias is obviously he's a guy that swings early in the count. He don't look to draw many walks, a low base to batting average percentage, which isn't always that great. But right now, he's playing every day for this Baltimore team, and he's paying good dividends for Baltimore and fantasy owners. The last few games here for Urias: July 10th versus the Angels, 2 for 4, 3 RBIs. July 12th at the Cubs, 3 for 4, a homer, 2 ribs, and a run. July 13th at the Cubs, 0 for 3 with a run. July 15th at Tampa, 2 for 4, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored. July 16th at Tampa, 2 for 4, run and a rib. And July 17th at Tampa, 1 for 4 with an RBI. So right now, Urias, he qualifies at second, third, and short. Not great positions in fantasy baseball. And he can help owners as well here coming after the All-Star break. We know this Baltimore team, they've been hot of late, winning 10 out of 13 here. And Urias has been a good part of that. So right now, with his qualifications at a few positions, and a guy that's been red hot over the last few weeks here, he's available in 85% of fantasy leagues. And I definitely would give Ramon Urias an ad this week. The next guy is Andrew McCutchen of the Milwaukee Brewers. So McCutchen came out of the gate slow with his new team this season, but now he's starting to get things going. Here is Kutch. On the season, 9 home runs, 41 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, 38 runs scored, 257 average, and a 317 on base over the month here for McCutchen. 5 homers, 16 RBIs, a stolen base, 16 runs scored, 307 average, and a 366 on base. So McCutchen here, he's showing some power. He's driving in some runs. The batting average has definitely gone up over the last month of the season here. And he's available, surprisingly, still in 67% of leagues. So the last few games here for him: July 10th versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs. July 12th in Minnesota, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. July 13th at the Twins, 1-for-4. July 14th at San Francisco, 2-for-5 with a rib. July 15th at the Giants, 1-for-5 with a run and 3 RBIs. July 16th at the Giants, 1-for-4. And July 17th at the Giants, 0-for-3 with a run. So right here, McCutchen, he's batting anywhere from first to fourth in this Brewer lineup here. And this Brewer team, they've been struggling for the most part over the last few weeks. And McCutchen's been one of the only bright spots right now. So going into the break, that can help him as well get rested up and come out in the second half of the season and really get things going. So if you need a guy that's going to show some pop, steal the occasional base here and there, and drive in some runs, I think McCutchen is a decent ad this week. The next guy is Leody Taveras of the Texas Rangers. So one of the hottest pickups as well this week. Added in 40% of fantasy leagues is Taveras, one of the top prospects in this Ranger system over the last couple of years. And also the cousin of former outfielder Willie Taveras, who was known for his Colorado Rocky days about a decade plus ago. So on the season here for Taveras, 3 home runs, 15 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 14 runs scored, a 341 average, and a 360 on base. So he's a guy that swings early in the count. He's not going to draw many walks. He's going to be aggressive up there as Taveras. And hey, it's worked out for him 2 weeks of the season. It's worked out for him. 1 home run, 11 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, 8 runs scored, a 410 batting average, but a 415 on base. So like I mentioned, he's not drawing walks. He's aggressive early in the count, and he's getting on his Taveras, and he's showing some power as well over the last few games. The last few games here for Taveras, July 11th versus Oakland, 3-for-4. 3 RBIs, a stolen base, 2 runs scored. July 12th versus Oakland, 2-for-4, run, a rib, stolen base. July 13th versus Oakland, 1-for-3, a run, 2 RBIs, a stolen base. July 14th versus Seattle, 2-for-4 with a rib. July 15th versus Seattle, 2-for-4, a homer, 2 RBIs, a stolen base in that one. July 16th versus Seattle, 1-for-4 with a run. July 17th versus Seattle, 1-for-3. So Taveras is still available in 60% of fantasy leagues. And he's been a good find here for this Texas Ranger team. And for fantasy owners who got out of the gate early in the last week to pick him up on their roster, he'll help you out in power. Obviously, his batting average is great. And he's a guy that could steal possibly 30 bases if he plays a full season. But obviously, he hasn't been up the whole year. Only 82 at-bats so far here for Taveras, and last season he had a cup of coffee, but struggled with this Ranger team. But right here, one of the top pickups as well this week, and I would give him an ad. The next guy is Brandon Nimmo of the New York Mets. So he's been in and out of fantasy value this season is Nimmo, and right now he's available in 40% of leagues on the season here for him. 9 home runs, 33 RBIs, 59 runs scored, a 270 average, and a 357 on base. And Nimmo, he's known obviously for scoring a lot of runs here, already with 59 on the season in the first half of the season. But over the last month, he's been playing better and showing some power as well. 5 homers, 12 RBIs, 22 runs scored, a 274 average, and a 331 on base. He's known for on base and runs scored is Nimmo. And if you need help in those categories, or just a guy who's going to get on base and get some hits as well, he'll help you in that. Not really a great power hitter, 9-33 on the season, but he does a lot of other things here as Nimmo. But he's also a guy that could go get cold quick and not do much for fantasy owners. But right now, this week, he's definitely an edge. July 11th at the Braves, 1-for-3, 2 runs. July 12th at the Braves, 0-for-3 with a run. July 13th at the Braves, 2-for-5 with 2 runs. July 14th at the Cubs, 3-for-4, a homer and RBI, 2 runs scored. July 16th at the Cubs, 1-for-9 in a doubleheader with 2 runs scored. And July 17th at the Cubs, 1-for-3 with a run. So right here, if you need runs scored, good on base and batting average, decent, I think Nimmo's a decent ad this week, and he can help you in a few categories. The next guy is Yoan Moncada of the Chicago White Sox. So one of the top prospects in all Major League Baseball 3-4 seasons ago here when he was in the Red Sox system is Moncada. Before going in the Chris Sale deal, it just hasn't been good for him over the last few seasons. But now he's starting to get things going a little bit here is Moncada. 5 home runs, 23 RBIs, 19 runs scored, 209 batting average, and a 261 on base. But over the last couple weeks here, he's picking things up. 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, 10 runs scored, 270 average, and a 325 on base. So Moncada, maybe he's getting things going after missing the early part of the season with some injury concerns. And right now, he only qualifies at third base. I know he used to play some second as well here, but he's available right now. 6% of fantasy leagues is Makota. The last few games, July 11th at the Guardians, 1 for 4, homer, 3 RBIs. July 12th at Cleveland, 0 for 4. July 13th at the Guardians, 1 for 2 with a run. July 14th at the Twins, 2 for 6, 2 runs. July 15th at Minnesota, 1 for 4, 2 runs. July 16th at Minnesota, 3 for 4 with 2 runs. 15th at Minnesota, 2 for 6, a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored, so the power's starting to get going. He's at tops of the lineup right now. They moved him up over in Chicago. And he's scoring runs as well, so if you need some power and runs scored, he'll definitely help you in those categories. Just be mindful that he's a guy that's going to strike out a lot, is Makota. The next guy's Nolan Gorman of the St. Louis Cardinals. So Gorman, a lot of people have dropped him over the last few weeks here. And one of the top prospects coming up this season for the St. Louis Cardinal team here is Gorman. But right now, he's only owned in 43% of fantasy leagues. He's out there in 57% of leagues on the season here for Gorman in his rookie year so far. And plus only in 162 at-bats, 9 home runs, 22 RBIs, 26 runs scored, a 241 average, and a 320 on base. Over the last 2 weeks, I know he struggled. 2 homers, 4 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 195 average, and a 298 on base. But right here, this guy's got major power, no doubt about it. He had over 15 home runs in a short stint in the minor leagues early in the season. And he qualifies at pretty weak positions as well in fantasy at second and third. So I think Gorman's going to turn things around. I know he don't play versus lefties so far in the early going of his career, but this guy's got a sweet swing, and once he really figures things out, he could definitely help fantasy owners and carry their team for a few weeks, I believe. That's how talented Gorman is, in my opinion. July 10th versus Philly, 0 for 3 with a rib. July 11th versus Philly, 0 for 4. July 12th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 4 with a homer in that one. July 13th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. July 14th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 1. July 15th versus the Reds, 1 for 3 with a homer in that ball game. And July 16th versus the Reds, 1 for 1 with a run. So right now, we know the big boppers in that lineup, a Goldschmidt and Arenado, and Gorman's like the 4th or 5th best hitter in this Cardinal offense. But I think once the second half starts here, this guy's going to come out of the gate hot after getting his feet wet in the major leagues. And he definitely could be a guy that could cause damage and help fantasy owners big time in the next 70 games of the remainder of the season. The next guy's Eduardo Escobar of the New York Mets. It's been an up and down first season here for Escobar with the Mets and for fantasy owners. Last season, I know he hit 28 home runs with 90 RBIs, but this season, it's been a tough year. 11 homers, 40 RBIs, 37 runs scored, at 223 average, and a 277 on base. But over the last 2 weeks here, he's getting that average up, hitting 300 with a 323 on base at Escobar with 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. So Escobar, he's hitting the baseball. He's starting to find the holes. He's starting to show some power as well. I know 11 home runs isn't great, 90-plus games into the season here. But, hey, this guy could still finish the season with 20-plus home runs if he gets it going in the second half of the year. And he's a guy that qualifies at first, second, and third as well in fantasy. July 12th at Atlanta, 1 for 3. July 13th at Atlanta, 1 for 4 with a homer. July 14th at the Cubs, 2 for 5, a run and a rib. July 16th in a doubleheader at the Cubs, 3 for 9 with a homer in that one. And July 17th at the Cubs, 1 for 3. So Escobar, an everyday player for this Met team. And this Met team here, they need hitting bad, I think. I know their team is playing great in the first half of the season with a 57-35 record. But right now, they're going to need another bat, I believe, after the All-Star break towards the MLB trade deadline. And Escobar was supposed to be that bat, but maybe he's going to get things going. So right now, while he's available in 52% of fantasy leagues and he qualifies at many positions here as Escobar, I would give him a chance because over the last 2 weeks he's hitting. But like I mentioned, he hasn't been the hitter the Mets expected. And I think if the Mets really want to contend and be a World Series contender, they need one more big bat in the lineup. And it would help guys like Escobar be more consistent as well with more protection. The next guy's Nico Hoerner of the Chicago Cubs. So Hoerner, he's been a hit machine for this Cub team, especially since he's been playing every day now over the last couple months on the season here for Hoerner. 5 home runs, 27 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, 29 runs scored, a 300 batting average, and a 338 on base. But over the last month here, 343s hitting with 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, and 14 runs scored. So Hoerner still available, surprisingly, in 60% of fantasy leagues. And he qualifies at second and short, which are obviously weak positions in fantasy baseball. But he could steal bases, he could hit the baseball, and it'll help you in runs scored as well when he's batting fifth for this Cub team. Even though I know this Cub team, one of the worst teams in the league, 20 games under 500 plus is this Cub team. I believe 22, 23 games under 500. But Hoerner, he's been one of the only bright spots on this roster this season. July 10th at the Dodgers, 3 for 5, 2 runs a rib. July 12th versus Baltimore, 1 for 4 with a run and a bag. July 13th versus Baltimore, 1 for 4. July 14th versus the Mets, 2 for 3. July 16th in a doubleheader versus the Mets, it was an off night, 0 for 7, a run and a stolen base. But then July 17th versus the Mets, 3 for 4, including the game-winning RBI versus the Mets in that ball game. So Hoerner, he's getting the everyday opportunity. He's hitting the baseball great and stealing some bases as well, where he'll probably finish the season with 20-plus stolen bases. So if you need some of those categories, Hoerner is a guy to get, and he plays second and short, which obviously is weak in fantasy baseball. And the hitter I look to add this week here going into the break is Jose Miranda, the Minnesota Twins. So Miranda, he's come up this season and he's played pretty good. 8 home runs, 32 RBIs, 16 runs scored, 254 average, and a 292 on base. So his on base to batting average ratio isn't all that great as well, where he's a guy that swings early in the count and tries to be aggressive. But over the last few weeks here, he's been hitting the baseball great as Jose Miranda. 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 286 average, and a 342 on base. So he qualifies at first and third in fantasy baseball. And right now, he's out there in a ton of fantasy leagues. At 81% of leagues here is Jose Miranda. And one of the top ads this week as well, added in 14% of leagues. July 10th at Texas, 2 for 3 with 2 ribs. July 13th versus the Brew Crew, 3 for 5, a homer, 3 RBIs. July 14th versus the White Sox, 1 for 4 with a run. July 15th versus the White Sox, 0 for 4. And July 17th versus the White Sox, 0 for 2. The only thing with Miranda, he doesn't play every day, but he'll still play 4 or 5 times a week here. And as a utility guy or a guy to come off your bench occasionally and play, I think Miranda's a decent add for your fantasy team. And like I mentioned, he has some versatility at first and third. He's available in 81% of leagues. And I would give him an add this week because I think this Minnesota Twin team, to close out the division in the second half, needs some hitting. And right now, Miranda is hitting, even though I could also see them go out there towards the trade deadline and make a deal for a hitter. So that's a few hitters I look to add here entering the All-Star break this week.